How does your water shed? Now, if you're like me, you may be wondering, what impact do I have on a watershed? Or rather, what impact do I have on it? And even, what is a watershed? Well, today we're going to be answering all those questions. So let's dive right in and start with the W. What? A watershed. A watershed is defined as a system of land where it starts with the precipitation, whether that be from snowmelt or rainfall. Then it moves into the tributaries down the floodline and finally into your bigger body of water, which is your estuary. Now, this entire system is altogether known as your watershed. So when we mention that, that's what we'll be discussing today. Now that we know what we're talking about, let's move on to some quick facts and look at the A, area. According to the USDA Forest Service, there are over 1,300 watershed projects in the United States. Overall, this takes up about 193 million acres of land. Now, to give you some perspective of what that looks like, that's about 8% of the United States land area, or 4 times the size of the state of South Dakota. Now, on a map, it'd be about the size of that blue dot right there. So we can see that watersheds take up quite a significant portion of the United States. But in addition to taking up a large area of land, they also account for 18% of the United States' fresh water, which is more than any single source. So we can see watershed systems are quite significant. Now, unfortunately, many watersheds are starting to run into some trouble. And this is mainly caused by one element, phosphorus. Now, a little phosphorus is good, but a lot of it becomes bad. And when you have too much of it, you get an algae bloom, which is one form of pollution. Now, being from Mitchell, one example that I have seen, or more smelled in the summer, is Lake Mitchell. Now, this is the actual picture of Lake Mitchell, and it might not look as scary as the previous one, but the real damage is going on underneath of the surface. If you look towards the corner, you can see that greenish color, and that's even bigger under the surface as well. According to the Daily Republic, a normal healthy lake or watershed should have between 60 and 80 ppb, parts per billion, of phosphorus concentration. However, just last summer, Lake Mitchell had 889 ppb, which is more than 11 times the healthy number that it should. So we can see that pollution is happening everywhere, and it's not just limited to Lake Mitchell. So now that we know pollution is a big problem, what effect does this have? Now, what we're seeing is that it has a lot of effect on humans. See, if water's polluted, we can't use it for any mundane activity, be it showering or brushing our teeth or doing the dishes. But it also interferes with recreational activities. Many people will use a lake for fishing or swimming or just enjoying the beaches. But just last summer, Lake Mitchell was closed from June 5th to October 5th, and no one was allowed on it due to the pollution that they were seeing. Now, it also has a big effect on wildlife as well. This is a real photo from Lake Mitchell, photo credit to the Daily Republic, and you can see a fish in the polluted green water. Now, wild native species such as deer might have the potential to go and find a new water source or a new home. Unfortunately, fish don't have the luxury of getting up and walking, and they're stuck in these polluted waters, which can often result in their death. So naturally, we're seeing many negative effects to both humans and wildlife. So now we're starting to look for an R, a resolution. And many federal agencies such as the USDA and the NRCS are desperately trying to help protect our watershed services. And they found that the best way to do this is actually by going local. See, the only way for them to know what's going on in our watersheds is if we tell them. So that's what we need to do. Now, you may be thinking, well, I don't really work in any conservation service. How can I help? Well, all you can do is tell someone, keep an eye on your watershed. If you smell something fishy or if you see something that doesn't look right, go ahead and tell someone who does work there. And therefore, you can help protect your watershed that's around you. By managing and working locally, this is the best way we can start to protect our watersheds. So to address how does our water shed, we had to look to the water in today's watershed. First looking at the W, which was what? A watershed. Then looking at the area showing how significant these are in the United States. Moving on to the trouble showing how pollution has now become a big issue and the effects that it has on its wildlife and us as well. finally looking to the resolution as to how we can try to help and protect our watersheds. So now I can ask you, what are you doing for your watershed? Thank you.